Do you like my t-shirt? It's not my blood. In this video, I wanted to talk about Halloween movies, and it's October at the moment, isn't it? So I thought, well, we could make spooky, Halloween-y kind of movies. So in this video, let's do the top 10 Halloween, horror, spooky, scary movies to watch in your man cave. That's a snappy title. So this is basically a countdown video. Let's start at number 10 with the Blair Witch Project. So the Blair Witch Project was first released in 1999. It's since been parodied, especially that sort of scary movie vibe where the snot comes out of people's noses. Really kind of gross. So Blair Witch Project was first released in 1999, and although it's not everyone's cup of tea, it does definitely have that sort of atmosphere, and it's probably unmatched in terms of just, oh my god, what's going to happen next? Now, some people get really kind of motion sick when they're watching this thing, and certainly at the time, I remember there were all these reports of moviegoers sitting in the cinema and starting to feel really sick because of the sort of motion of bouncing and bouncing. It wasn't like a steady cam, it was literally just someone holding a camera and it was just bouncing up and down like that. And so if you can imagine like this video right now, let's zoom in a little bit and make that happen, and then I can bounce around a lot. It was like this all the time. And so that's one of the reasons that I don't particularly like the Blair Witch Project, but it did kick off this whole sort of genre of found footage, which then led to Cloverfield and a whole load of other things. And although they're not very Halloween-y, they do use a similar sort of technique. So yeah, let's put that at number 10. Not my favourite, but if it's your sort of bag, it's one you're not going to want to miss. Number 9, Hereditary. Now, Hereditary is a story about a grieving family who's uncovering dark secrets after the death of their grandmother. Now, the grandmother herself is kind of secretive, but then dark and horrible things start happening to the family. So there's the daughter's shocking death, for example. I'm not going to go too much into spoilers on this one, but it is disturbing on a whole new level. So the mother discovers the family's history of demonic involvement and mental illness and cults and all that sort of stuff. Kind of disturbing. So the film actually culminates in a demonic possession. This is not the sort of thing you want to watch with your kids. And it's also a fairly modern film, so the special effects and stuff are quite good. It's 2018, so it was fairly recent. Number 8, The Thing. Now, this is a John Carpenter movie, so the same person who made the film Halloween. This is in 1982, he made The Thing. So he used a whole load of different practical effects to make it really super creepy, and some of them don't really stand up very well now, but at the time it was groundbreaking, and it's influenced filmmaking completely. Together with Stan Winston and his Monster Studio for special effects, those two together, John Carpenter and Stan Winston, amazing film. Now, if you're going to come at me in the comments that Stan Winston wasn't involved in this and that the effects were actually by Rob Bottin, then you've also got to know your facts. Stan Winston was involved in this, especially in the dog transformation scene. Can you tell I've got a degree in media? So yes, John Carpenter directed it, Rob Bottin was in charge of the special effects, and he is credited on the movie, but Stan Winston did jump in when Rob Bottin was a bit overwhelmed with the workload. But Stan Winston insisted that Rob Bottin was credited with the majority of the work because ultimately it was mostly Rob Bottin. Either way, the work was amazing, but being made in 1982, the effects are starting to get a little bit old now. Next up, number 7, The Conjuring from 2013. Now, The Conjuring is super creepy. So it starts out with the clapping game. Now, this is where it's a bit like hide and seek. You get blindfolded and you clap. It's kind of like a cross between hide and seek and Marco Polo. So you clap, person who's blindfolded follows the claps to find the person who's hiding. Eventually it leads to someone being inside a cupboard when some ghostly hands come out and clap next to someone's ear. Really creepy, brilliant movie, absolute modern classic, definitely one to watch on Halloween, but don't watch it alone. Moving on to number 6, I've already mentioned John Carpenter, but he's on this list again in 1978, this time with Halloween. That's obviously sprung off a massive franchise in Halloween, and Michael Myers never gets old. So if you want to watch something to do with Halloween, Halloween is one of the main things to watch on Halloween, but isn't number 1 yet. Number 5, The Shining. This is based on the Stephen King novel of the same name, and if you haven't read the book, please read the book. If you haven't watched the movie yet, read the book first. And that's the way I did it. I read the book and then I watched the movie. But the book is just full of really creepy details that I just love. Now, the original movie was made in 1980, directed by Stanley Kubrick and starring Jack Nicholson as Johnny. The little boy Danny eventually goes on to become the main protagonist in Doctor Sleep, which is Stephen King's sequel to The Shining. But if you're purely going for creep factor, The Shining cannot really be beaten. That said, the movie adaptation of the book Stephen King didn't like it at all. He hated it. So just bear in mind it might not be everyone's cup of tea, especially if you're the author of a best-selling book. Number 4, Sleepy Hollow. I know this one isn't particularly scary, at least I didn't find it particularly scary. It does tend to creep out some people, but Sleepy Hollow is a bit of a staple for Halloween. So much so that it's even permeated into Disney World, where the Headless Horseman actually does a parade at Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. And I'm going to be visiting that in about 3 weeks' time, so maybe I'll even film it for you and you can have a look on this channel. Disney did an animated version of it, and I guess that's what they're trying to recreate in the Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. What I'm trying to talk about though is the Johnny Depp version with Christina Ricci and what's his face? The guy who talked like this. What was his name? Christopher Walken. Yeah. 1999's Sleepy Hollow with Johnny Depp, Christina Ricci, and what's his name? Christopher Walken. That was the worst impression ever. So Christopher Walken, yeah. So Christopher Walken was the Headless Horseman, and he fought Johnny Depp, who played Ichabod Crane. Interesting fact, in the original version, Ichabod Crane was not good looking, so casting Johnny Depp was a bit of a strange choice. But then again, he is Tim Burton's pet.
Come on, Edward, it's like time for walkies.
It's not a strange choice at all. He chooses Johnny Depp for nearly every leading role. Number 3, Dog Soldiers. This is a British werewolf film released in 2002. And I'm not putting this one out there because it's particularly scary now, but mainly because the first time I watched it alone, and it was terrifying. And the twist as well, genius. So I'm not going to go too much into any of the spoilers on that. Let's move on with number 2. Number 2 is The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Now this film was released in 2005, so it's getting a little bit old now, but the special effects still hold up. This is essentially a courtroom drama, but with demons in it. And I know that doesn't sound particularly scary, like a courtroom drama, what? But they go through a real life case, and it is a real life case, of an exorcism of a girl called Emily Rose, and why the priest should be considered innocent because of real life possession. So the whole idea about this one is it's based on the idea that Emily Rose was neglected by the church and by her parents, and that led to her death through malnutrition and injury and all of that sort of thing. The defence led that Emily Rose was possessed and that the church did everything they could to save her from demonic possession. And so they go through some of the witness testimony and some of the backstory, and some of the flashbacks are scary as hell. So coming up, your number 1, the best movie to watch on Halloween in your man cave. It is the original, the first, the only, Freddy's first outing, Nightmare on Elm Street. I think I'm going to need to change this top. Well, here it is. What do you think? So if you don't know anything about Freddy Krueger, for goodness sake, watch Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, a couple of facts that you might not know about A Nightmare on Elm Street. It was the first movie that Johnny Depp ever did. This was in 1984, I think, so it was quite early on. He does look very fresh-faced, you might not recognise him. So Freddy Krueger, the guy himself, the original Nightmare on Elm Street with the blades for fingers, actually kills Edward Scissorhands, I guess, in a funny kind of way. So that's quite cool. Yeah, think about that one. Sweet dreams! If you look closely, in fact you don't need to look closely because he's one of the main characters, he plays Glenn. And he gets brutally murdered in his bed. Pretty bloody, pretty gross, quite laughable now though. So it was made in the 80s, and that probably explains the short crop top Johnny Depp is wearing in that scene. Some of the effects are quite dodgy, a bit like the tongue that comes out of Nancy's phone.
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
But, you know, it was the 80s and anything kind of went at that point. Robert Englund, who plays Freddy Krueger himself, is finally getting his star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame, but that's only happened this year, and it's very well deserved. Again, Freddy Krueger is played by Robert Englund in a whole host of different sequels and follow-ups and Freddy vs. Jason. I don't think it could be ever played by anybody else. He's just perfect at it. So which one was your favourite movie, and did I miss any? Please let me know down in the comments. I read all of them, I respond to everything, and I love hearing your opinions on stuff. If you like this video, click that like button, subscribe and ding that bell, and I'll be back next time with some more magical awesomeness. But until next time, as always... Magical. Well, you think that'll do, donkey? No, that's Shrek.